My daughter left me when I was fighting cancer. 2 years later, she came back, thinking I had died, hoping to get all my belongings. I am a 56-year-old man who was diagnosed with colon cancer 7 months ago. It was found during a regular checkup, and luckily, it was in the early stage. Even though the doctors were hopeful, I was very upset. No one wants to think about dying. When I got home, I told my daughter about it. She was as shocked and scared as I was. We only have each other. Her mother is alive, but not part of our lives. I am a single father living with my 22-year-old daughter, Hannah. My wife and I separated on good terms 14 years ago. We stopped loving each other, and she moved to Atlanta with her boyfriend, leaving me to take care of our daughter, who was 8 years old at the time. Hannah has always been a difficult child. She didn't handle our separation well and became angry with her mother for leaving. She never spoke to her mother after that and ignored her calls. I tried my best to fill that gap and raise her well, but I guess I didn't do enough. When I told Hannah about my cancer, she was very hurt. We cried and hugged, telling each other how much we loved each other. We talked about our happy memories, like her graduation day, our yearly vacations, and hiking trips. She promised to support and take care of me. I never thought she would get tired of me and leave, but here we are. After 7 months, she packed her bags and left me behind like I was nothing. I have always supported her, and this is what I get in return. I do understand that it's hard for a young woman to take care of her sick father. But she didn't have to do everything. I had a nurse for that. All I needed was for her to be by my side. My doctor advised me to quit my job or reduce my workload because the treatment would be very tough on me both mentally and physically. I told my manager about it, and he was understanding. He let me leave my job, saying I could come back after I beat this disease. I decided to quit my job to focus on my recovery. Money wasn't an issue for me. I had no big expenses. I had paid off my house mortgage long ago, and my daughter had finished her education. I had enough savings to last for a few years and some assets I could sell if needed, so I was in a good place financially. I was also optimistic about the treatment, and my doctors were supportive. Hannah used to take me to chemo and regular checkups. The chemo sessions were so painful and exhausting that I could barely move for a day or two afterward. I needed Hannah's help with basic tasks like getting me food and medicine. I got myself a wheelchair to move around the house on my own during those weekdays. Still, some days, even getting into the wheelchair felt hard. The treatment was wearing me down mentally and physically. I felt so weak, like my bones were about to break. It made me even more frustrated that I struggled to do simple things like eating, walking, or using the bathroom. As the months went by, Hannah became irritable. She stopped coming to my room and barely spoke to me. Our conversations dwindled to one-word responses from her. It hurt me to see my daughter ignoring me. She was the only person I had, and talking to her helped me forget some of my pain. But when she became hostile, it was unbearable. I asked her if she thought I was a burden, and she exploded, saying yes. It was heartbreaking. She said she was tired of taking care of me. I understood that making meals and taking care of my basic needs could be overwhelming for her, and that young people often don't like being around the sick, so I told her I would hire a nurse to help me. I asked the hospital for a home nurse, and they assigned an experienced one. I thought this would solve the problem, but it didn't. Hannah remained cranky. She kept her distance and was mean to the nurse. I asked the nurse to avoid Hannah, but Hannah still picked on her for small things. She even told the nurse not to touch the refrigerator or enter the kitchen because she thought the nurse was dirty from taking care of me. Though Hannah never said anything directly to the nurse, it became clear that she didn't like having the nurse around. The nurse asked if I was happy with her work because she sensed that Hannah was not. I assured her that she was doing a great job and I had no complaints. That evening, when the nurse left, I confronted Hannah about her behavior. I had previously asked Hannah to stay out of the nurse's way and let her do her job peacefully, but now it was affecting the nurse's ability to work. When I told Hannah she was being mean to the nurse, she lost it. She said I was making a big deal out of nothing. She claimed the nurse smelled bad and that she was just trying to teach her some basic hygiene. I lost my temper and yelled, "God damn it, she's a nurse. She's been trained in hygiene. She knows more about it than you do. Who do you think you are to give her hygiene lessons? A school dropout." Hannah exploded, screaming and ranting for a good 10 minutes about how I had made her life miserable. She blamed me for why her mother left and why she didn't have a normal childhood. I was used to these kinds of outbursts from her, so that part didn't hurt me much. What really hurt were her false accusations. She called the nurse terrible names and claimed I was protecting her because I was her sugar daddy. She said the nurse must have seen me as an easy target to manipulate and take my wealth since I had no family to inherit it. I cut her off, shocked by how delusional she sounded. Our argument got so heated that she stormed out, slamming the door in my face. An hour later, I heard her yelling again from the living room as she dragged her packed suitcases out of the house. She shouted, "I'm leaving for your own good. This is what you wanted. Now you can do whatever you want with your mistress. Spend all your money on her before you die. I don't care. Don't expect me to visit you when you're dying. I'm not coming back." I wanted to stop her, but her words broke my heart. Tears filled my eyes as I sat by the window, sobbing, and watched her pack her suitcases into the car and drive away. It's been weeks since she left, and I feel worthless. I have failed as a father. Her words hurt me more than my illness. How could she accuse me of having a relationship with my nurse? How could she think I would waste my life on the nurse? I feel like a failure, both as a husband and as a father. I have no motivation to continue my treatment. Edit 1. Thank you all for the love and support. This post has unexpectedly received a lot of attention. I was using this space as a kind of therapy to deal with my miserable and lonely life. Everyone engaging with my post is very precious to me. Even the smallest bit of love means a lot, so thank you all. I'd like to provide a bit of background about Hannah. A kind person asked why my 22-year-old daughter is living with me and if I took her for therapy when she was younger. Dude, yes, I did everything to help her manage her emotions. Counseling, spending time with her, taking her out. I even avoided getting serious with any woman to prevent any upheaval in Hannah's life. Hannah didn't handle our separation well and became aggressive. I took her to therapy, which helped somewhat, but her aggression often returned. She dropped out of college despite my efforts to convince her to stay. She said she wanted to start her own business, a salon, so I funded it for her. At the salon, she met a guy she said was the love of her life. She wanted to marry him after less than a year of dating, and she was barely 19 then. I advised her to wait longer before making such a big decision, but she did what she wanted. Her marriage didn't last even a year. She moved back in with me after it ended. The guy she married was a loser with no job who lived off her salon income. When they used up all the salon's investment, they had to sell it. He left her soon after, and she didn't get any alimony since he was broke. She ended up with no income and no husband, so I had to take her back in. She has been living off my income since then. Now when I'm dying, I'm afraid she might abandon me like a pile of garbage. Update 1. Hey friends, I know it's been months since I last updated. Thank you for checking on me. I'm thrilled to have connected with so many of you through DMs. I never expected to find genuine friends in this space. This month, I completed my last chemo session and have been declared cancer-free. I can't thank the medical team enough for their excellent care. After the conflict with my daughter, things got really tough, and my recovery stalled, if not worsened. My doctor became concerned and suggested I see a counselor to help me deal with the distress. It was a big help, it really was. In my first session with the counselor, I just cried my heart out. It was such a relief to talk to someone after so long. I even admitted to her that I felt like giving up on my treatment and letting the disease take over. But the counselor helped me manage my depression and feelings of hopelessness. I was advised to have a full-time nurse because I lived alone and was getting weaker. If any emergencies happened at odd hours, I needed someone to look after me. I offered double pay to my current caregiver to work full-time because she knew my medical history and condition. I didn't want to replace her. If Hannah had been here, she would have criticized me for having a full-time nurse. It upsets me to think about how she accused me of something I would never do. Anyway, I've moved on from my daughter. If she can abandon me when I needed her most, I shouldn't dwell on her either. With support from my doctors, counselor, and nurse, I focused on getting better. My nurse took me for chemo, and I realized that it was mentally draining more than physically. When Hannah used to come with me, her tantrums stressed me out more than the physical exhaustion I was going through. In the midst of my treatment, I lost my hair and weight, but I remained positive and determined to overcome it. I feel guilty saying this, but I think Hannah moving out turned out to be a positive thing for me. Over time, I felt the negativity leaving my life. I couldn't be more relieved. I had been holding on to her until now, making her my sole purpose in life, sacrificing my own happiness for hers. But her leaving taught me a tough lesson. I shouldn't have overdone my duties. My love and care shouldn't have allowed her to exploit me and walk all over me. She treated me like a punching bag, and I just took it. Not anymore. It's such a relief. I'm looking forward to rebuilding my life. Before, I thought about going back to work, but now I realize I don't need to. I have enough savings to get by. If I start running low on money, I'll consider taking a simple job, like at a supermarket. But for now, I'm focusing on regaining my strength and muscle mass. I've started with walks and plan to jog and run once the breathlessness subsides. It's not easy. I still get tired after doing simple tasks. But I'm taking it one step at a time. My nurse is still here, but I'll let her go once I regain enough strength to take care of myself. Update 2. It's been 2 years since I was declared cancer-free. During these 2 years, I focused on doing things I truly enjoyed. I realized I never really enjoyed my life. I worked hard all my life to provide a good life for my daughter. During my free time, I dedicated myself to her to fill the gap left by her mother and to avoid getting into any serious relationships. I ghosted many women and then felt guilty, so I stopped dating altogether. I did all of this to protect my daughter. However, it all seemed pointless once she grew up, and I found myself with free time, but I didn't make good use of that time. I was still worried about how it would affect Hannah. She had always lived with me, except for the 10 months of her marriage, and I knew she wouldn't tolerate another woman in the house. After becoming cancer-free, I decided to start dating again, which was initially quite awkward. It was funny because I realized that the rules of the dating game had changed a lot. Nowadays, women use so much slang and jargon that I often found myself reaching for Google Dictionary in the middle of conversations. After meeting about 6 women through a dating app, I finally found someone I clicked with. No, I didn't sleep with 6 women, we just went out for dinner and coffee. This woman, let's call her Sarah, is in her early 50s. She was cheated on by her husband multiple times. She gave him many chances to change for the sake of their daughter, but he didn't. Eventually, she moved out and raised her daughter as a single mom. Now that her daughter has gone off to college, Sarah is giving dating another try. It was her daughter who encouraged her to find a partner. Sometimes, when she talks about her daughter, I feel a twinge of jealousy. Not in a bad way, but it makes me wonder what I did wrong that my daughter never reciprocated my love. Moving in with Sarah after 6 to 7 months may seem fast to some, but considering my age, I don't think it was too hasty. Approaching 60, I realize I may only have a couple of decades left before I'm laid to rest. We discussed living together, and while the option was there for her to move in with me, Sarah preferred that I move in with her. She has a knack for artistry and has beautifully designed every aspect of her home. Who would want to leave behind such craftsmanship for a house that was falling apart? I struggled to maintain my house properly, let alone make it aesthetically pleasing. Plus, I didn't have many fond memories associated with the house that I wanted to hold on to. I needed a change of scenery, so I sold my house. Yes, I sold it. It meant more cash for me to enjoy my retirement luxuriously. Why not? Why should I leave it for Hannah, who abandoned me to face my illness alone? But all of this happened months ago. Why am I updating now? Because last week, something unexpected happened. My daughter encountered a ghost. While I was relaxing with Sarah, I received a call from Andy, the new owner of my old house. He was furious. He said that a woman had trespassed on their property and caused a scene. She even got into a fight with Andy's girlfriend. According to Andy, a young woman sneaked onto the premises and tried to enter the house. She had a key, but it didn't work. When she couldn't unlock the door, she started banging on it loudly. Andy's girlfriend opened the door and confronted the woman for the disturbance. In response, the woman insulted Andy's girlfriend, calling her names and accusing her of trying to take advantage of a dying man to get the house. Andy's girlfriend tried to explain that there was a misunderstanding, but the woman wouldn't listen. She yelled at the top of her lungs, hurling insults and demanding that Andy's girlfriend leave the house, claiming it belonged to her dad who had passed away 2 years ago. Andy's girlfriend clarified that Andy had bought the house and it hadn't been given to her. She didn't know my name as she and Andy weren't dating when he bought the house from me. Unfortunately, Andy wasn't home to clear things up. His girlfriend called him in a panic, but by then the woman had left, threatening to return with her friends the next day. From Andy's description, I knew the woman was Hannah. When Andy asked if I knew her, I reluctantly admitted that she was my daughter, knowing he would be upset. And he was. He freaked out and asked me to come over the next day to sort out the situation, or else he would call the police on her. Initially, I suggested he call the police and get a restraining order, but later I realized it was my responsibility to deal with her and not let them suffer. The next day, I showed up and waited for her. She arrived with 2 of her friends who seemed inexperienced. She yelled from the front porch and smashed the flower pots kept there. Andy opened the door holding a baseball bat to scare them off. I asked him not to, but being a baseball coach, how could I stop him from showing off his skills? He stepped out, and before Hannah and her friends could charge at him, I stepped in. Hannah froze, and her friends stopped too, seeing her reaction. She muttered with a blank expression, "You're alive? I thought you were dead. What happened to your cancer?" It was an unforgettable moment. I would have given the house away for free just to see that shocked expression on Hannah's face. She turned pale and pointed towards Andy and his girlfriend, asking who they were. I explained that they were the new owners of the house. I sold it to them. She had the audacity to ask, "What did you do with that money? Aren't you going to die?" Although her words were hurtful, they didn't affect me anymore. Instead, I burst out laughing in her face. "I don't mean to tell you, but I'll humor you. That money is for me to live the rest of my life. That's right, I'm cancer-free now. Before you ask anything else, let me make it clear. You get nothing from me. I've quit my job, and whatever money I have, I'm going to spend it on myself until the last penny. You're on your own. Keep thinking that your dad is dead, just like you've been doing until now." She was in tears. She told her friends to leave, saying it was now a matter between her and her dad. Meanwhile, I told Andy that I would be leaving, and if there were any further disturbances, he should call the police and get a restraining order against her. With that, I left. Hannah ran after me, pleading, "Dad, don't do this to me. I'm your daughter, your only family. You can't abandon me like this." I smirked and replied, "Sure, I can abandon you just like you did to me." I got into my car and drove off. Normally, in such a situation, I would feel regretful and sad, but that day I felt lighter, satisfied, and somewhat happy. I believe I did the right thing. I should have taught her this lesson a long time ago. Thank you for your support. I appreciate all the comments and well wishes I receive on this thread. I hope nobody has to go through the turmoil I experienced. Sending lots of love to everyone. Story 2. I discovered that my wife cheated on me and left for a rich man, but now it turns out that he's been married. Let me start from the beginning. I had recently ended a long-term relationship when I, a 34-year-old man, met my wife, who was 35 at the time. The breakup wasn't too traumatic. We simply realized we wanted different things in life and decided to part ways. A few months after the breakup, I met a woman named Katie in a coffee shop. We struck up a conversation and hit it off. When we exchanged numbers, I made it clear that I wasn't ready for anything serious due to my recent breakup. Remarkably, Katie was willing to wait for me until I was ready. I thought that someone willing to be patient must truly be interested in me, so I felt lucky to have found her. We took things slowly, and within a year and a half, we decided to move in together. Another 6 months passed, and I proposed to her. We started planning our wedding, which went smoothly. At the time of our wedding, both of us were financially stable. I had a decent job, and so did my wife. While we might not have been as wealthy as the 1%, we were considered middle class at the very least. Our relationship was solid. We had our ups and downs, but overall, we were building a great life together. For the first 3 years, everything seemed fine until my wife started working on a particular project at her job that seemed tough, or so I thought at the time. She was putting in long hours and spending a lot of time away from home. I missed her, but I understood that she was busy with work. When I had important projects at work, she supported me. I kept asking her when she would be finished, but she kept extending the deadline. This went on for nearly 6 months. It didn't make sense why she would still be working such late nights. It reached a point where I couldn't ignore that something was off. So I decided to check her laptop, the one she had brought home from work. Her personal laptop didn't show anything suspicious. I had already checked it. This meant the evidence had to be on her work laptop. I didn't know exactly what evidence I was looking for, but I was convinced there had to be something on her laptop that would explain what was going on. On her laptop, I discovered several emails from an unfamiliar email account. These emails were exchanges between her and a mystery man, all of them of a romantic or sexual nature. Finding this confirmed my worst fear. I was being cheated on. When my wife returned home from picking up dinner, I had the laptop open with the incriminating emails displayed. She seemed shocked but said nothing. Seizing the moment, I confronted her about the affair. My wife erupted in anger, claiming I had violated her privacy by accessing her work laptop, which contained confidential information. It was ironic, considering she had used that same laptop for her illicit conversations. Ignoring her deflection, I pressed her to reveal the identity of the man she was cheating with. She reluctantly admitted he was a former client from her office with whom she continued to communicate after their professional relationship ended. Eventually, their interactions turned intimate, and they began sleeping together. When I asked if she had feelings for him, she confessed that she did. My wife confessed that she intended to ask for a divorce so she could be with this other man. Upon investigating, I discovered he was extremely wealthy, like obscenely rich. While my wife always appreciated the finer things in life, she used to strive for them through hard work. I couldn't understand this sudden change in her character. Perhaps it had always been there, and my love for her had blinded me to it. Regardless of the reason, I knew our marriage was over. My wife initially resisted the idea, but I sensed she was only going along with it because she felt obligated to. The divorce process seemed to drag on for ages, but in reality, it only took a few months. She went her way, and I went mine. Divorce was never something I anticipated, yet here I was, newly single and on my own. My ex-wife wasted no time in finding a new partner and proudly announced their engagement on social media. However, it all unraveled when it was revealed that her supposed fiancé was already married. He had misled her, claiming to be a widower when his wife was actually alive and caring for a sick family member in another country. When she returned, the whole situation exploded. The engagement was called off, but given that her fiancé was already married, they couldn't have gotten married anyway. After her failed engagement, my ex-wife's social media became increasingly erratic. She lamented about losing her soulmate, but it seemed more like she was mourning the loss of her wealthy fiancé. It was all about the money. He was her ticket to a lavish lifestyle, and losing him was a blow to her aspirations. Meanwhile, after my divorce, I reconnected with a woman from my past, someone I had ended things with just before meeting Katie. We had been friends for a while and eventually realized we were both ready to give our relationship another shot. She was understanding about my divorce and offered her support. When news reached my ex-wife that I was back with this woman, she went berserk and began publicly attacking me and her former fiancé on social media. Her relentless posts even jeopardized her job. Her employer, being a public company, could be negatively affected by her online behavior. I heard that she was put on probation as a result. Deciding to distance myself from social media was a wise move. Seeing my ex-wife's posts only added unnecessary stress. From what I've heard, her actions have resulted in consequences at work, with her being moved to a different department and possibly earning less. It's unfortunate, but it's a situation she created for herself. If only she had been content with what she had, things might have turned out differently. As for my current girlfriend, we're discussing the idea of marriage, but we're taking it slow. Rushing into anything without being completely sure is the last thing either of us wants. I'm determined not to repeat the same mistakes from my past.